attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the webinar in the Financial Abuse Awareness Series. My name is Bill Mitchell. The series is part of a financial protections project co-designed by the Queensland Government, Caxton Legal Centre and Townsville Community Law. The series is an online continuing professional development program that aims to raise financial industry awareness about the financial abuse of older persons. Before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This presentation is about detecting elder abuse, financial abuse. It's the third in the skills module series. The slides are not read verbatim, but they are paraphrased for emphasis. They are designed to be standalone, readable modules and contain references for deeper learning. So let's begin. Let's take a moment to think about this statement from me, Jazz. This study found that the incidence of financial abuse might well be 44 times higher than reported to authorities. Just let that sink in for a moment. 44 times higher. Developing skills to detect financial abuse or the risk of financial abuse builds on these key areas of knowledge. It flows from understanding the context and nature of abuse, industry examples, and risks and vulnerabilities. It builds on key skills in working with older persons, assessing capacity, and working with particular groups. Differentiating economic abuse is important. In some cases, detection can be very difficult. The learning outcomes are set across in the box on the right. Financial abuse is hard to detect. The barriers include complexity, awareness, definitional and recognition factors. A key challenge is gaining access to the private domain of family behaviour. It's also hard because financial abuse can be perpetrated physically remote from the older person and actually without their knowledge. The onset of financial abuse is often gradual and insidious, and it's very difficult to differentiate abuse from legitimate transactions. It's also important to note that cognitive impairment, sensory impairment, and lack of financial sophistication can cloud the distinction between a willing assent and abuse. Another complicating factor is how we target individuals. Many systems exist and they include an age proxy approach, a vulnerability approach, and a hybrid approach. So far in Queensland, no particular approach has been taken. There are no particular laws that outline detecting or responding to financial abuse. It's also important to presume vulnerability might well be inconsistent with our approach to presumption of capacity, whatever someone's chronological age. So we just don't presume that someone is at risk because of their age. We need to recognise behavioural triggers, and you've already seen these triggers listed in another part of the program. You can read this list, and some of these behavioural triggers might well be known to you already. You may have experienced them already in your own practice. Red flags given in industry examples are worth repeating. Industry-wide bodies have identified the range of red flags that warn of financial abuse. AFCA has outlined a range of industry red flags. They're included under the bullet points. Those red flags go on. All of these examples are shown also in determinations that AFCA has made, so you can look in more detail at how AFCA treats each of these red flags and looks at what the financial service provider ought to have done in that particular situation. And more. All of these examples are practical examples that you can think about and may well occur within your own office or workplace environment. AFCA's approach to financial abuse is set out in Determination 483486. You should read that determination. It talks about how the assets of an older person can be used to their detriment, and vulnerability combined with a detrimental impact can help to identify improper conduct. It's important to distinguish potential financial abuse from what is an actually informed decision. AFCA's approach can lead to a number of different outcomes for the advisor, and it's important that their approach can be found in many determinations. If you apply the approach in determination 427752, it gives you a very clear example of how they will look at the issue of financial abuse with respect to the use of account holders who are living in a nursing home. I'm not going to read through that. We'll let you read that at a later time in your own time. AFCA set out the red flags that should have been obvious to the advisor, and the fact that the actions of the financial service provider did not comply with good industry practice. The range of warning signs include people expressing concerns about missing funds or unusual transactions. Unusual transactions include ones where most or all funds in a joint bank account are transferred away from the control of one of the account holders. And there are a range of good industry practice in relation to mandates on joint accounts. CPA Australia has their own approach that sets out when accountants have legal and professional accountability for detecting abuse. They refer to the liability in the case of Barnes and Addy, and they talk about the extent of the accountant's professional duty to exercise reasonable care and skill. Accountants are in a unique position due to their professional training to recognise and understand financial abuse may exist, either potentially or actually. The CPA notes accountants are expected to take proactive steps to avoid abuse. You cannot merely follow instructions. You must ensure that clients are properly advised. As far back as the Older People in the Law report of the Federal Parliament, financial advisors have been identified as acting inappropriately towards older persons. And there's a range of products there, including financial planning products, equity release products, and scams such as cold calling. There are industry examples for financial planners where problematic advice, including financial products, including the appropriateness of investment products, protocols and procedures for dealing with clients with diminished financial capacity, advising clients with diminished capacity, and recognising the potential for fraud and abuse by trusted family members, friends or strangers. As you can see, there's a strong commonality between the way in which all of advisors' cases have raised red flags for financial abuse. Before we leave this module, let's reflect on this excerpt from the CPA's publication In the Black. Thanks for listening to this webinar series. Feel free to download the PDF for future reference. The next module will be number 4 in the skills series, which is looking at the issue of economic abuse. Thanks for joining us.